Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you all doing? I am slowly crawling out of my home, out of the fear of disease, out of the fear of BA5, out of the fear of monkeypox, entering the world again. Naomi is in Me Time, which is a Kevin Hart movie that's on Netflix, and we went to the premiere, and I sat in a room with 1,000 people? I don't know, a lot of people, where we were the only ones with masks on, and I don't have COVID, so apparently being double boosted and wearing a mask does work. And I'll tell you what, it was a KN95, okay? I wasn't wearing just like some surgical mask. This thing was tied around my face. I did a fit check. Anyway. Slowly, and interesting how like emerging into the world, seeing people actually doing things makes you less depressed. Interesting. Anyway, great episode today. This is Attia Taylor. And if you don't know who Attia is, why don't I read you her bio right now? Originally from Philadelphia, Attia is a writer and musician based in New York City. She is the founder of Womanly Magazine, a publication dedicated to providing accessible health information to women and non-binary people through visual and literary art. She's also half of the psych pop band Strange Parts and has been writing and releasing music under her own name since 2009. Her first full album, Space Ghost, was just released this summer on Lame-O Records. It's wonderful. This is what I love about doing this show, is that publicists will just send me music while I'm sitting here writing or just going through my inbox and deleting a ton of spam. I get to listen to a lot of new music and discover things that I might not have discovered otherwise. Attia's music is great. I really like this album, and also she's from Philadelphia, so I'm always excited to talk to people from Pennsylvania, and this was great. She's awesome, very interesting story, so I hope you like it. If you do, why not subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from? Also, I am on Instagram and Twitter at Andy Beckerman. Twitter for very dumb jokes. Instagram if you want to see pictures of the Me Time premiere. And also read captions where I discuss the hors d'oeuvres that we ate there. I got some fantastic episodes coming up, including Laura Veers, Dear Nora, Lincoln Michelle, wonderful sci-fi writer, and also Karen Gillan, one of my favorite comic book writers. These were all great talks, so stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Attia.
Where are you from originally?
Well, here's where we go. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from Reading.
Amazing.
I'm excited to talk to you, a fellow Pennsylvanian.
Yeah.
From Philadelphia. Where in Philly? What part?
North Philly.
North Philly. Okay, so I went to Temple for grad school.
Oh,
but
cool.
because I was in grad school, I basically didn't do it. I worked 60-hour weeks. I was barely scraping by. They paid you like $14,000 a year. So so I'm just barely getting by. So I really did not explore much of Philly. So what's North Philly like?
Well, I went to Girard College, which you may or may not know. It's like a boarding school in the city.
I don't. I read about your background, but that's about it.
Yeah. So I was there, and then my parents and my grandparents lived on the same street. My parents met as kids, and that was in East Falls, which is like on the cusp of North Philly. So I grew up between there and the boarding school, and I don't know, it's all right. I mean, I didn't spend much time out and about. I was really kind of behind these like big stone wall for a long time. For 10 years, and then...
Or literally?
No, literally. There was a huge wall around the campus. And then I went to Temple for undergrad. So, yeah. I was in North Philly a long time. it's different in a lot of different places.
Yes.
It's,
I found Philly
it's
to
different.
be a block by block city.
It is.
Like,
It totally is.
I lived in South Philly, and like the block I was on, I have to believe it was mob protected. I don't have any evidence that is a complete fabrication on my part. But there was like an open air drug market like 2 blocks over from me that never spilled over into the block I was on. So
Yeah, that checks
I
out.
have to believe that that some, Italian bruiser was like, it doesn't go past 8th Street.
That checks out. That checks out for sure.
So what was the block that you grew up on? What was that like?
It was in East Falls, and it was a really small little, like, it was like, so Allegheny Avenue is like a huge avenue, and then it's like these 3 little streets behind it, and I lived on one of these streets on 32nd and Allegheny, and it was like a really small neighborhood community kind of vibe, a lot of older people. I was like living with my grandparents for a long time. And would kind of ping pong between my grandparents' houses because they were like across the street. And yeah, there were a lot of little kids too. So I got to play a lot outside. Until I left for boarding school, it was like pretty cool. It felt like a little bit like its own place. Mm-hmm. So if you walked out and you go to like Allegheny Avenue, it felt like, wow, I'm in the city now. But like when you were on our street, it was like we didn't have a lot of through traffic. So it was just like our little world, which was nice.
So when you walked out on Allegheny, what was that like? Like what was the vibe, I suppose, in 21st century talk?
It was like a lot of cars. I mean, it's like a huge street. I just remember like we'd get a few quarters every week allowance kind of thing to like get candy. And there were like corner stores on Allegheny. There were 2 different ones. And so we decided which one to go to. And me and my sister were allowed to walk. And so we had to cross this huge street to go there. But that's all we were allowed to do. Like we just crossed the street, got our chips and candy, and then we crossed the big street and come back. Like I don't remember that much about otherwise. Like, we never talked to anybody. We never walked anywhere else. It was just like straight across the street on one side or the other side to get our candy and snacks because it wasn't that safe. I mean, we were in North Philly, and we were little kids. So I wasn't really allowed to do anything more than just go get a snack.
Yeah.
That was the extent of it.
That's what I'm curious about. Your experience is just like, Lay's potato chips and Mike and Ike's or whatever is your...
Yeah.
Your food of choice.
Yeah.
But I was like, I remember North Philly as being the only way it was ever depicted to me was like, hey, if you're on Temple's campus, don't leave the campus. That was the only way anyone ever. And I'm just like, as an adult now, I mean, not that I wasn't an adult then, but in my 20s then, but like, I'm just like, it was probably fine. I mean, I don't know what it was probably like being told to me by very like uptight, like scared white people.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Well, where I was, it wasn't like other parts. Like where I was like closer to East Falls. So it wasn't like as violent or like scary as other parts. Like I mentioned, it was like an older community and it was like close to the Falls Bridge. So while there was stuff going on, it was not like other parts of Philly where I had some of my friends were from, where there was like a lot of drug activity. So when I was at Temple, I had friends who lived off campus nearby, and that was scary. I wouldn't walk around at night, just simply because you weren't sure, especially as a woman alone, like what could happen. Sure. There were like drug houses on the street. Yeah. So that's a different part than where I grew up. Where I grew up wasn't quite like that, but there were things to be worried about for sure.
Mm. I mean, I guess the closest I would ever get to like being anywhere near anything off campus was that subway that was on. I don't mean that subway station. I mean the Subway sandwich shop.
Oh, I was which one?
Right near the Cecil B. DeMille stop, I think. If I'm right, this is a long time ago. My brain has atrophied in the last 15 years. So
yeah, I've also haven't been there in 10 years, so it's been a while.
Hey, if you're barely scraping by those $5 footlongs, gotta say, handy dinner. But So candy, walking out to Allegheny to get candy. You said you're ping-ponging. Do you mean between like your maternal and your paternal grandparents' houses?
Yeah. My grandma and grandpa for my mom and my grandma and grandpa for my dad were like literally across the street. Like you could see their houses directly across. And it wasn't a big street, so it was pretty great. I mean, for a kid to have both grandparents in the same street was like, we were very spoiled in that way. They were like really like jealous of each other. Like we spent most of our time with my mom's parents, but when we'd go and visit my dad's parents, my grandma would be like, I'm jealous when you go there. I was like, I went for one night. I literally live with you. She's like, I don't like it.
What are these households like? Like, what's I really hate this word, but it works very well. What is the vibe?
What the vibe was?
What's the energy, I guess, is more like I'm saying. Like, how's this? Here's a better way of saying that instead of being so vague. What are you picking up in these households? Like, what is transmuting into your brain and forming you as a person?
I can tell that you read about me. You must have. You must have. Because the album was like a lot about growing up. And so we did not have a lot of money, and my parents were separated. My mom lived with us for a short time, but she moved out and she got a house. But we were obsessed with our grandparents and never wanted to leave. And she, I guess, was fine with that. She's like, I'm not going to take them away from where they're comfortable. And we were going to school, so we lived with them. She was there sometimes, but we lived with them primarily. And they were older. My grandma had my mom pretty late on. So when we were little kids, she must have been in her 70s and had a brain aneurysm when my mom was a kid. So she was there, but she kind of sometimes wasn't there. And so we just did whatever we wanted. Like, she would cook for us, make us lunch for school, and take us to school. But I don't really remember conversations. We had a lot of TV time, a lot of playtime, and it was just a little, I don't know, a little fort, I feel like. We didn't go a lot of places. We just kind of were home all the time. And yeah, I was watching Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, eating a lot of snacks, unlimited snacks, as she would buy them, as my grandma would buy them. And my grandpa was around, but he was, doing his own thing, just being our grandpa and not really caring.
What does that mean? Reading books about World War II?
I don't know. He would teach me checkers every now and then. He worked a lot. He worked into his old age. I remember when he retired. And he had his own, my grandparents were in separate rooms, and he had his own room. And he just watched baseball, and he still had a rotary phone for a long time, way past when it was cool. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he just chilled in his zone because we were watching all the TVs. I mean, we were watching Nickelodeon on the main TV in the 90s. He wasn't able to watch TV because I was watching Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yeah, I think that's outside my era. I think the last Nickelodeon show that I had watched was probably the first iteration of the Nicktoons. So Ren, Stimpy, Doug, and Rugrats.
Ah, okay. That was still on. Yeah.
And then after that is like I would see if I would walk past my sister to be watching like Real Monsters or whatever, and I would see it, but I don't remember really like watching it. It was on in a room somewhere when I was like walking past it, but those aren't my references exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was definitely our era, and it was almost like glory for me. I thought it was the best thing in the world to have all of that really specific programming. I don't know what kids have these days, but I felt real lucky.
Peppa Pig? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, I remember when SpongeBob came out, and that was like the end of my, like right when that came out, I was like, I'm done with cartoons as a kid. So I don't know what's going on out there.
Yeah, I'm a childless adult in the entertainment industry, so I have no clue. Unless one of my friends with kids happens to clue me on to something, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, my niece and nephew, I don't know what they watch.
So, okay. So you are growing up, you have all this TV time. Do you also have, and I'm wondering about this because it happened to me, and again, this show is just me projecting my own existential stuff onto other people to see what sticks. But like hanging out with like my grandmother, you know, there would be stuff that I would pick up that was like I remember this very specifically, and I'll like mention this. My wife and I have a podcast. Whenever I mention stuff like this, she's like, "What are you talking about?" But like Johnny Carson, there would be these collections of clips of Johnny Carson sketches that they would show on afternoon TV that I'd only see if I was like home from school and hanging out like at my grandmother's or something like that. And so like there's this whole repository, and also like I mean it was weirder maybe in the like late 80s early 90s, and I don't know, you tell me, but like there was Animaniacs, which would have tons of old references. I would read Mad Magazine, which had tons of old references. I just became this repository of like old references that none of my peers had any idea what the fuck I was talking about. But I would reference like Karnak, and they're like, "What the fuck is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Johnny Carson sketch from, you know, the early '80s when some of us didn't exist." So like, it in some way it was kind of alienating, and it kind of started to pry me apart from other people. Mm-hmm. It gave me, it's one of those things that gave me some space to kind of like reflect on things around me, and I'm wondering if you had the same kind of experience.
That's interesting. I wonder about that. I definitely picked up on things from my grandmother, that like old sayings that she would say from like being from the South and being old, like slow as the Dickens, or I don't know, just like being, I really can tell that I was raised by an older woman. As an adult, I don't know about references. My grandmother was like not herself. Like she wasn't her young self because she had that brain aneurysm. Uh-huh. And so she like watched TV. She'd like watch her like these stories, the like Young and the Restless or like Bold and the Beautiful. But like all grandmas watch that, As the World Turns. And she was like super Christian, but not like super, super Christian. She was like sometimes would watch gospel or like sermons on TV. I don't feel like it was specific to her nostalgia. I think at that point she had a bunch of records and she never played them when we were kids. Like they were in the garage. I didn't find out she had a record collection until she passed away. And I think that's because she just like, in a lot of ways, was just kind of surviving and existing in a different space than she used to as when she was younger. Mm-hmm. As opposed to like me, when I get older, hopefully will be able to like be listening to all my old records and be excited about certain things. So I think that is probably some of it. I do know my grandpa was like still with it and like would watch MASH or like, I don't know, other stuff that I was just not hanging out with him that much. So like I said, my grandma let us watch TV. She would like only make us turn our stuff off when she was watching the stories. I really don't know where she was when I was in the living room all the time.
Do you mean physically
I have no
or
idea.
mentally?
Both. I have no idea. I feel like we lived alone. We ran that house.
Do you like? Can you describe her personality, like post aneurysm?
See, that's the thing. Not really. She like didn't really have a sense of humor anymore. She was like, she hated photos. She was like very loving though. She like was very like, she wasn't super like, I love you, like give me a hug. She was just like, took care of us. She was like, made us dinner, left our clothes out. She was like affectionate in her own way, but like in terms of knowing who she was, I really don't know. I mean, maybe I was too young to know. I was like maybe 6 or 7 when we lived there, and earlier. So I don't know. But I do know lots of things about like her. She used to love Snicker bars. Like she'd buy them in like large packs, and I like had a real bad sugar addiction as a kid and would like sneak and get them, and I got in trouble one time because like she hid them from me. It was so bad that she had to hide them from me, and I found them and I got in so much trouble. And you know, she was like still clinging to a lot of her like womanliness, like her lipstick. I remember like trying on her lipsticks. I also got in trouble for going in her purse and putting on her lipstick. So yeah, I mean, she was just like, she was a lady, and she like had her way about her, but she wasn't very like vocal. She didn't talk a lot. She just was like, I'm gonna take care of these kids because I have to, and that's that. Like I remember people coming by to visit, and she would just like make them food or something and like watch TV with them. There wasn't a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your paternal grandparents fit into the picture then? You said that you would go over there like you would sleep over there once in a while.
Yeah. They were awesome. They were younger, much younger. And it was a riot. When we go over there, they'd like let us play dress up, and like my grandma's phone number was super close to the radio station phone number, so people would call her and be like, am I the number one caller? And sometimes she'd like pretend they were, and like she got all these like bells and stuff and was like, you're the number one caller. It was really funny. Yeah, my grandpa was super cool, and he drove the SEPTA bus for years and years, and they had a house in Delaware, and we'd go down and go to the shore and so that was when we got to like go out and be out, and it was really fun and different and like exciting. But it was like not all the time. It was just like when my grandma on my mom's side was chill enough to be like, all right, fine, go ahead.
Oh, was she like pretty possessive? Like you said that she felt bummed, but like, was she like really possessive?
I don't think so. But I do think she was like clearly the primary caregiver. Like they were you can go over there sometimes, but like you live here, clearly. My mom had like because my dad wasn't like super in the picture. So it was my mom who was really more like in charge of who take care of us. So it was like, that's why we were at our grandparents on my mom's side way more. Yeah.
Do you know why your parents split up?
Yeah, they were together in like, I want to say like elementary school. I have a picture of them in middle school together. They went to prom together. I have their prom pictures. And I just think like they were super young when they had us. I mean, my mom was like 21 when she had my sister and 23 when she had me. And yeah, my dad was just like a little jerk, and they were too young. He was just like not ready to be a dad or a human or an adult. And like you're really not an adult at 21 or 23 even. You're 25 and you're still figuring it out. So I think it was just he was not being very good to her, and they got married, but it was my mom was just like, I gotta get out of here. My dad was a bit of a maniac. you know, I hope he doesn't hear this because he gets like real mad. He gets like real mad when stuff comes out. It's like, don't talk about me. He's fine. Like, he's in his own world and I let him be there. But yeah, I think when he was young, he was just a bit of a rascal. And my mom was like, I have 2 kids, like babies. I can't be around this. He was not ready.
Sure. You said you didn't hang out with him much, but did you have any kind of relationship with him, or did you gain a relationship with him the older you got?
Yeah. It was like, later on when we were in middle school. By that time, we were already in boarding school. So we'd spend one weekend at my mom's, and then we'd home on the weekends from boarding school. I should say that. So we'd go home one weekend to my mom's, and then the next weekend we'd go to my dad's. And my dad got remarried and had 2 boys. So we'd spend time with them. And like, we just stopped going at a certain point. I don't really even know how long we were going there. I think maybe like, I don't want to say a year, if that. And I don't know. I just wanted to go home and play The Sims when I came home from school. I didn't want to go sit in like some guy's house. I was like, I'm ready to play like Roller Coaster Tycoon and eat Cheez-Its. I don't want to do this. It's been a long week. Don't make me do this. So my mom stopped making us do it. And yeah. Then now we talk every now and then. Like, it's no hard feelings or anything. Like, it is what it is. But yeah, we talk every now and then.
I guess that's what I was trying to figure out. You seem like a pretty chill person, but I was trying to figure out if like it was if you're like resentful, or if you're, again, I'm actually now just using people I know in my life as a way to project them onto you. So.
Well, I am chill, but like I wasn't chill in my early 20s when I started to become an actual human and my brain closed up. I was like, wow, this is all the things that happened in my childhood were dysfunctional as hell. Like, I can talk about it now with a clear head and, having healed through it. I haven't been in therapy for a really long time, but there was a point when it almost drove me crazy thinking about a lot of the things that happened, and just like not feeling stable. Like, yeah, it was fun to be a kid running around watching TV and eating sweets all the time, but like that's not conducive to a good, healthy adult. I didn't form good health habits as an adult. Yeah. So I had to learn that, and it was expensive and time consuming, and it ruined a lot of relationships. So yeah, I was mad for a while. Not mad anymore, but I was mad for a while. And I've told my father and my mother about all these things, and they've heard it all from me. So I feel like I've gotten it off my chest.
Sure. How do you think that instability, though, contributed to your creative life or formed your creative life in any way?
Oh, yeah, a lot. I think, well, one, I was like not, I was able to be super, super spaced out all the time. I didn't have to be focused on anything really, even in school, because nobody was saying to me, you gotta study right now, or you gotta, what's your homework? Like, even my homework, sometimes I'd hide my homework. I'd be like, I'm not doing this. So I just like watch cartoons and like just zone out. And I think, and whatever I was listening to, like music I was listening to, I'd get really into. I get super into it. And that was my world. So I think a lot of that plays into me now, who I am now. I still am pretty much unable to focus on any one thing that's not related to something I super love, like music or making art or doing things like that. And like in terms of the dysfunctional stuff, I mean, it makes for great songwriting. I've always been a poet at heart, and I get to write a lot about a lot of dark shit that happened. I mean, there were some things and moments and times where it was fairly violent or dark or uncomfortable and awkward that I get to talk about in music, and maybe I don't have to say it directly, but I get to be poetic about it. Maybe those experiences influence my work, and also they make for good lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Is that stuff like you had to work out in therapy before you could actually tackle it creatively?
No.
Or?
Mm-mm. I mean, I haven't written, I mean, I think maybe before therapy it was a little more scattered, the thoughts. I think now I could probably be more eloquent about how I phrase things and think about memories and describe things. But before it was just, I could put it all out there in whatever way. I didn't feel like I had to be so, have it be so good. I could just say whatever I wanted to say.
Yeah, I understand that. Like, just get the unarticulated stuff out there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I toned it up and got it to be more elegant and fancy. I like to say. I like to write words that feel fancy and a little bit fantasy but dark. Mm-hmm. In that Ren and Stimpy kind of way. Like, this is really cool, but if you really look at it, it's super dark. If you look into it, this is weird and dark. So I like writing that.
What was the process of therapy for you? Like, did you do EMDR? I just started that. That's why I asked.
No. Oh, really? I'm curious about that. I've been in therapy since college. I had a really bad nervous breakdown in college and took some time off. And my mom was like, you gotta go to therapy. My mom was the reason I went to therapy. I didn't know what else to do. She didn't know what else to do. And so I went to therapy and very quickly got to a better place very quickly. It helped a lot with just talk therapy. And it was not soon after that I moved to New York, and a few years went by and I started therapy again in New York, and I've been with the same therapist since I moved here. So that's been about, I want to say 8 years or something like that. I've been with the same lady, and I love her. I thanked her on my album, and it's been a journey to think about. I remember this first sessions. Sitting there and explaining how I felt about pain and misery and crippling anxiety, and thinking about myself now. It's interesting to see how far I've come. I'm always trying to get people to go to therapy because I'm such a success case.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how's EMDR?
EMDR. It is.
How
so
is
I'm
it?
doing this tapping version because I really don't like moving my you have to do this eye movement stuff, and I don't like that part. But you can do. There's a version of it where you're just tapping. It's basically just you go in and you kind of at least for me, I don't know what it's like for other people. The idea is supposed to be you can go and kind of reshape certain memories so they're not as present, and they're not as they don't trigger the same stuff in your head that they have been.
Yeah.
So you basically just go. For me, what's been happening is you go in, you kind of just you're it's guided by my therapist, and you talk through this memory, and then you start to actually think about well, wait, is that memory correct? And it's well, it couldn't be the way that I actually remembered it, because the person couldn't have, the way the room was shaped, the person couldn't have been in this space. So what was actually going on? And then as you're just going through it, your mind wanders, and eventually as you go back to this memory, the more you do it, it just kind of mushes it in your brain. At least for me. I don't know what it's like for other people. It just kind of takes the memory and if you ever use Photoshop, there's a smudge tool.
Yeah.
And the smudge tool just makes everything kind of mushy. So it basically just EMDR is a smudge tool for certain memories that are traumatic.
Wow.
In whatever way.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I had looked into it before because I was having a hard time with a breakup. But my therapist was like, it's more for like PTSD. That's kind of the way she described it to me. And I was like, I don't know if I really have PTSD. But
It can be for any, like, I just have like some small T trauma type stuff. It's nothing like, I don't think it is PTSD, but it's stuff that like for most of my life has triggered the same kind of feelings or like holds me back in certain ways. And so I think that it is useful in that. It's not this kind of like, it's not like eternal sunshine of the spotless mind or whatever that is. It's not like it's like erasing the memory. It's just like being like kind of like rationally thinking through the stuff and then being like, oh, well, why did this have this power over me? This kind of like non-conscious power over me for so long, and then is it the right way? Or like it's not like a hippie kind of just like, we're gonna reprogram your brain.
That's what I wanted. I wanted the eternal sunshine. She was like, no, you're gonna sit here and just do the work here. But yeah, I feel you. I hear you. That sounds really effective.
Yeah, it's good so far. Do you mind if I ask about the nervous breakdown? Like what led to it?
Yeah, I had a friend, really, really close friend who, so when I was a kid, I just felt like I didn't have a lot of friends who were similar to me in school. I just felt like super lonely a lot. Like I have interests and I felt like I wasn't connecting with kids. And then I had a friend who I finally connected with, and like we were close, and we were both in boarding school, and we both just had the same interests and everything and bonded. And she was hella smart, and she was a little older than me, so I looked up to her. And she went to college, and then I went to college, and she like had a lot of trouble with her life. She had a lot of trauma, and I think it haunted her a lot. And she was, as college kids do, trying out drugs. And I believe, and I don't know this to be true, but I believe it triggered her schizophrenia. And slowly I watched her unravel.
Oh, God.
Mentally, as this like super, super high functioning human being, I watched her unravel, and it was really hard. And it led to me having insecurities around my mental health, and almost led to like severe psychosis. And so I had to kind of separate myself from the situation a little bit and then start therapy. And I think I still have a lot of effects from that, to be honest. That was really hard. That was hard.
Yeah.
But it was rough, and it was like grieving a death. Although she has not passed, she's still very much alive. But it was hard to watch. The person she was is not the person she is now. And that still really feels hurtful to me, that I didn't get a chance to grow up with her in the way I wanted.
Yeah, that's super rough. And especially like, I mean, this is just dumb armchair psychology type shit, but like, especially with your grandmother who also like went through a kind of, I mean, not in your lifetime, but went through that kind of personality change. So there's already this kind of like, you have this like predisposition to be like being attuned to that in some way. Again, it's just shitty.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I've had mental health stuff in my family, not just my grandma, like other things with my family members. And I remember being a kid hearing about depression and hearing about psychosis. And I remember when I was a kid, I went to, like, my cousin died when he was 4 and I was 5. And like years later, I freaked out about it and was like, I gotta go to heaven. Like, I gotta see him. And the school counselor is just like, I don't know what to say about this. Like, are you going to kill yourself? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I just so fascinated with this all of a sudden. And like I had to go to like the hospital. And I remember that being a moment in my life, like almost like a checkpoint of feeling really introspective. So I've always kind of felt insecure about my mental health, I think, because I've had depression my whole life and have been, triggered by a lot of things. And so that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with other things I was going through. So yeah, that was a perfect storm for me in college.
Yeah. Were you already making music at that point?
Very much so. I had already put out like 3 EPs. I was working on an EP right when that happened. I was like, I was so eager to write about the brain and like how the brain worked. And this is way before like I knew how bad my friend was. And she came back from school and we were going to meet up and I was super pumped. I was like, you should go to the store with me. I'm going to get all these notebooks. I'm really excited to study the brain. And then that night I realized how bad it was. And the album that I wrote, you can like kind of hear it in it. It's this EP, Luxurious Corners, that I put out. And it's like, even listening to it and listening to other demos from that time, it's just like, I couldn't even really put my all into it because that's how sad I felt about the situation. Yeah. And I had like a tape recorder where I had like talked for hours about my thoughts on the situation that I still have. It's really strange. Some strange things.
Have you gone back and listened to like, I'm imagining, by the way, one of those little tiny tape recorders that like therapists use and you're like making notes into it. You're like,
I had a tape recorder from when I was a little kid, actually, that I don't have it anymore. But I'm pretty sure I still have those tapes. I haven't listened to them in years. It's been a long time, but maybe I'll revisit them. I don't know. It's a lot of rambling. It's a lot of rambling.
You still have the ability to play tapes, by the way. I think I have a tape. I have like my old 4-track somewhere, but I don't know where. And I don't even have the ability to play CDs anymore because they turned this laptop into a thing that like just does this. Basically, you can like plug some stuff into it, but otherwise, it's like they've made it almost useless.
Yeah, and I don't have a tape player by any means. I never even think about tape players. So my boyfriend has a PlayStation. So if I wanted to play a DVD or something or a CD, but I don't see the point of a CD anymore. Any song that's on a CD, aside from some guy's demos that he gave me in college or something, I don't think I'll be playing CDs anytime soon.
No, we got a like very cheap DVD player because they still send out screeners like at wartime. They'll still send out screeners on DVDs. So we've got like a $30 DVD player to watch them. But other than that, there's absolutely we don't have any. Everything's been like turned into a streaming something.
Do the TVs even have hookups anymore for DVD players?
Yes, you can get an HDMI hookup.
Okay, got it.
Same place where you plug in your video game thing, you can plug in the DVD player.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, okay, wait. So tell me about this boarding school thing. How did you end up there? You were, 7?
Yeah, I started at 7. I was 7 going on 8. How did I end up there? My neighbor, when I lived with my grandma, which was my mom's childhood friend, one of her kids got in because you had to test to get in. And it was like single parent home or like low income. And my mom was like, my kids are going to public school in Philly. I want them to have a better education. I can't necessarily afford it. So this seems like a good option. And she asked us if we wanted to go. She told us about it. And it seemed cool to me. It seemed cool to me and it seemed cool to my sister. And we were like, yeah, let's do it. And then we got in, both of us. And I remember at one point before, maybe it was like the summer before, I was like, my mom had called us because she was at her house and we were at my grandma's. And I was like, I don't want to go. I'm terrified. And then I was like, okay, I want to go. It's not like she would have said, sure, you don't have to go. We definitely had to go. And like every summer we'd go home, and every summer I'd be like, I hate it. I want to go. I don't want to go back. And she'd be like, it's just one more year. You'll be fine. And every year it would be the same thing. It'd be like, you'll be fine. You're good. You're good. And eventually I was just like, this is never going to happen. I'm never leaving. So I just stayed forever. So it was good. I'm glad we went. I'm glad. It was hard at first to be 7 and not home. Was like in a big room filled with other kids, all girls in that. It was co-ed, but we were in separate sections. And it was just like in third grade, there was this big room with all these kids. It was like an orphan room. It was weird. We were all just in beds. Like, imagine if it was like Annie or something.
Oh, really? Like lined up down the...
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was like, had like a little separator, but it was like back to back, side to side bed, like little 4-pod beds, all across the room, big room. So, and like at night, it would be like wailing, like kids just crying all night. I was one of them.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. I'm like, if everyone's there just to get like, how do you, like, I was actually about to ask, like, are you a light sleeper or not? Because it doesn't seem like it's conducive to.
No, I didn't sleep. I cried myself to sleep most nights. The first year, at least. I cried every night. It was rough. And I slept right in front of the door. So, like, the hallway light would shine right in. It wasn't, like, black, like pitch black or anything. The, like, fluorescent lights from the hallway would shine right in on me. And that never bothered me because it was always, like, this imagining my mom walking in. I'd always be like, at least I could be right here and think about leaving or my mom coming to get me. So that was, like, good for me. But yeah, it was like real sad. Everybody was sad.
Was there any positive? I mean, you say like that you were glad that you went there. Like, what was the positive part of it?
The positive part was we did get a good education. We were safer. You know, it was like a campus where it was gated and I felt more security when I was like in East Falls. You know, it wasn't like very violent, but you'd hear about neighbors, things that I remember one of my neighbors had like shot himself in the head. He was like 21 or something. And like,
oh God,
it was just like bad stuff. So I felt safer. It was like a good environment for me to be creative and make new friends. And, you know, it was hard emotionally early on. And I think maybe I would have started later if I could do it all over again. But I don't know. I feel even though I was really sad, I still have friends from that time. I still have memories that are probably why I'm a creative person now. It was a lot of free time to be creative because we didn't have like parents hovering over us to do things. You know, we had options to play sports and stuff and do things, but really we didn't. We just kind of were on the playground or in our dorms, just being silly and making songs, and it was fun. Yeah. So it wasn't all crying, but I did cry a lot. I was a big crybaby.
Well, you're talking to someone who was like, until maybe 7th grade, there was a point where it got embarrassing that I would cry like I did. And so
Wow.
I just, like, I think again, this was not a conscious thought. At least I can't remember it being a conscious thought. It was just like my body was just like, all right, we're going to repress everything. We're just going to push it all down. You're too sensitive. We're going to turn that off for a while. And you can recapture it in a couple decades in therapy. But for now, for these next, let's say, 16 years, you're just going to... No, that's not... Yeah, about 16 years. You're just going to shut everything down. And everything's just going to, like, just happen. But you're not going to, like, register it happening.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate. That it's just a lot a lot of pain at that age, a lot of just not knowing how to process things happening to you. And it's awkward. All of it's just really fucking awkward, especially if you're naturally an awkward person and an awkward time. Yeah, I can imagine. It's just not easy being that age, I don't know your experience or what you went through, but it sounds like you had some things that you didn't want to have to deal with.
It's not, again, it's just like, there's things that I say every episode where I'm like, you know, I was Jewish in a very Christian area, Pennsylvania. Things like that, where it's like, you know, things where you're like othered pretty quickly, or like learning about the Holocaust too young. And it's just like, oh, wait, history's been trying to kill my people. All right, let's, you know, finding out those kind of revelations and stuff like that. You know, I don't think it was like, but like it did, I feel kind of resonance with you because it did create, like, it did push me apart from other people. And it did. And I think within the tension, that space between me and other people is a place for anxiety too. It's like black mold in your bathtub. You know, it's a space for that to grow.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes me curious about other people's experiences like that, where I'm just like, oh, is that also, you know, if someone's art resonates with me, I'm like, did you also feel these kinds of things growing up?
Were you creative in that space?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I feel like if you're creative and you have that lonely space and you're a little weird, like I was, you're making some things. You're writing, or you're putting out some kind of artistic expression.
Yeah.
In that space.
What was your weirdness when you say you were a little weird?
That's a great question. I mean, I've always just kind of felt a little different and off from everybody else. Well, one, I went to an all-black school, and I listened to a lot of alternative music, and it was just not the popular thing to do. I had a group of friends. We all liked it. We all listened to the same stuff, but that was it. And I was writing plays, and I was trying to get my friends to put them on in middle school. And like all the other kids were trying to date and like not wanting to be bothered. And I was like, come on, let's put this play on. And I got my mom to get me a video camera. And at that time, video cameras were like the big clunky, like, you know, VHS, that was what there was no iPhone.
Was it the full VHS or was it the little mini one?
It was the mini one by that time. So she had got like on eBay or something, or like one of those sites. We got like a used one, and she like got it for me. And I still have these videos of me having my friends recreate things from TV and like music videos and things like that. So I don't know, just always trying to do something that was not based in reality. Mm-hmm. I was always trying to escape what was going on. And I think I can't say like, oh, I was doing super weird things, but I definitely felt a little different, a little weird, a little bit quirkier than everybody else.
Yeah.
At that point in my life.
When you say alternative, are you talking about just like Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in middle school, it was way cornier. Like, I had just discovered things like John Mayer, and I was like, cool. And then I listened to a lot of Hilary Duff, which, you know, I'm not ashamed. I'm a Duff head. I'm a Duff head. And then in high school, it started to become, I had a teacher who burned me and my one friend some CDs, and it had like the Shins and the Smiths and Interpol, and it just got, I listened to that before I heard any like real intense like rock or anything. I remember when I first heard Nirvana, and I remember going down rabbit holes. But for me, the first thing I heard and fell in love with were like Belle and Sebastian and the Shins and yeah, I mean, I feel like those were like the main bands I was listening to at that time from these CDs that my teacher made us.
Yeah. What's everyone else listening to? Because this is the thing. There was Nirvana and there was Smashing Pumpkins and that kind of stuff, and that gave way to like indie rock. So by ninth grade, I'm listening to like Pavement and Yo La Tango and all this kind of stuff, and that really alienates me. Then there's only like a handful of people who are listening to the same music I'm listening to, and like if I go to a school dance, it's like mostly like Boys to Men and that weirdly, like I guess it was like someone's dad was a DJ, so like it was like Boys to Men and then like Stairway to Heaven or something like that, and there would be like one Nirvana song, one Pearl Jam song, and one maybe a Red Hot Chili Pepper song, maybe an REM song. I don't know. You get like 3 of those kind of hits, and then I would be excited for that, and then it would be back to like Jodeci or something, and then so what is everyone else listening to while you are going down this path?
Yeah, it was like that, but there was no like segue to Nirvana or Stairway to Heaven, or it was just like it wasn't even Boys Men, because this was later. It was like Sean Paul and Beyonce and it was like the early 2000s.
Yes,
in middle school. So like Missy Elliott and Gwen Stefani. It was like pop, hardcore pop, like whatever was on the radio. We were still listening to CDs at that time, so whatever was popular at that time was it. It was like hardcore pop, hardcore R&B, and some rap if it was clean, because we weren't allowed to play anything dirty. But I remember the song being really popular in 5th grade. It was a huge hit in our 5th grade class.
Yes, I remember that. So is this further alienating you from other people?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Trying to figure out the
absolutely.
Pathway, right?
Yeah. This was it. That was really the most separation that I had from everybody else. Nobody really even knew. I have a few friends who got into it, and like maybe I introduced a few people to it. But I was really, and music was like my thing. That was all I wanted and like did. So I'd listen to music in my headphones when I wasn't in class, in between classes, on my way to lunch. Anytime I could be listening to music, I was. So that was my whole world. And I wasn't listening to what everybody really was. I did like some of the songs, like pop songs. I still like R&B, and like I still do like that music. But for what I was into at that point, I was just like, no, I'm going to just keep diving further into however I can get my hands on new music at that time. Like, I was super into Block Party, and I remember how obsessed I was with their first album, Silent Alarm. Like, changed my life. Like, musically just totally blew my mind. That album was so good to me.
Did you have like a specific ambition? Did you have either like a creative or a professional ambition that you were chasing?
I mean, I really wanted to be a musician. I did. I really wanted to be a musician, and I also really wanted to be a filmmaker. I liked making creative visuals. I had my camcorder. I had my mom would have an extra laptop that she let me use, and I'd try to edit on that. So by the time I was in 10th or 11th grade, I was writing songs. I had a band, and I wasn't super into school at all. I was trying to just get through because I had severe ADD. And yeah, I was I don't know what else to do except be an artist, because this is what I'm good at, clearly, and it's all I like. So yeah, I wanted to be a musician, and I went to Girls Rock Philly when I was 17, and it was so perfect for me, because I didn't know what else I would have done in order to get into that world.
What was that?
To be Girls Rock Philly.
Girls Rock Philly?
Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh yeah, it's a girls rock camp from I think 8 to 17. And my music teacher at the time, it was being hosted at our boarding school, the first one in Philly, because they're all over the place. And my music teacher was like, "You got to sign up for this." And I was like, "Cool, yeah." I signed up, And I went when I was 17. I was one of the oldest campers. And I met all these cool people especially women from the Philly music scene at that time. And I got totally pushed into it through that. Like I was funneled in from all these connects I got there. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done. I would have just been on MySpace a lot, putting songs up.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I did not know. I was not sure what this conversation was going to be, but I didn't expect this, and I really enjoyed talking to you about this stuff. It's so interesting. Usually it's like talking about the songs or the magazine or something, but this was really fun, and I'm glad I could share a little bit of my like young weird self. Weird to me, at least.
No, yeah, no, I love it, and it actually does give me such a. I really like your new album so much, and it really gives me a better if I would just be like, so where'd you come up with this lyric? It's also like I kind of can see like the lyric. I can some of that. I'm like, okay, I understand this now. Like more than if I would have just like asked you about it. And also like this is the other thing about why I do the show like this is because like I've been interviewed so much and I know the same questions and a lot of the answer. Like I already know the answers. If you were to ask me like certain things, I already know it, and then I kind of like disengage. I'm no longer like here in the interview. I'm just kind of like seeing if I can come up with a new joke off of like the way I'm telling the story. Like, I'm not present really. So
Totally. No, this was a first that being able to talk about boarding school in this way. I've told my friends or like new people I meet, but never really talked about it in detail on like an interview or in a platform. So this is great. Thank you. It was very refreshing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.